Excellent. So welcome to Empower Hour. Today's session is all about I-9 requirements. I'm going to pass it over to Jodi to get things started.
Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate that. So, yes, thank you for joining us today as we talk about the I-9 form, which is one of the mandated forms that any employer should be having new employees sign when they come on board. And so, we're going to just walk through the form itself and some of the requirements that you should know about having I-9s for your employees. So, what is an I-9 form is always a good thing to just remind people. The whole purpose of an I-9 form is basically identifying that that person has work authorization in the United States. So, that is the purpose of the form. You do need to have the section 1 is completed by an employee, and you can see a sample of that form right on the right-hand side. So that top portion, which is basically their name, their address, their social security card or number, their phone number, date of birth, and then the biggest part is what is it that authorizes them to work in the United States. So the key is that you want to have your I-9 form completed appropriately to avoid any unlawful hirings. So you want to free yourself from penalties, which can range from $3,000 per error on an I-9 form up to over $100,000 in penalties. And so that is why this session is very important, that you just do the forms correctly, and make sure that they are filed correctly inside of your business. So, like I said, the employee, not you, must fill out section 1 of the I-9 form on their first day. So that is really important. It has to be that first day of work, not the second day, not the second week. It has to be day 1. And basically what that is saying is that, as you're onboarding somebody, that you are securing the fact that they can work in the United States legally. So an employee attests right there by putting in their information. So that is them saying, yes, this is what I have, and that they have to bring valid documents with them. So when I was in HR, I would always say prior to an employee coming in for their first day, you need to bring the following documentation for you to start. And that included, right, payroll information, whether it's a canceled check, and then this I-9 information. Um, I would send them the documentation that they needed to bring, because you cannot tell them what they have to bring. So you can't say, bring a social security card and a driver's license. You have to allow them to pick from the list, which is on page 3 of an I-9. And so I would make sure in my email confirmation with their hiring letter that the I-9 information was in there and that they understood that. So employees must present the original, not a photocopy. It has to be original. And this is where it is on the onus of the owner or the HR person to know what that original might look like. Can't be expired. So because you're going to have to write in this information on the back side of the I-9. So if work authorization expires, the employee is responsible to get that to you. And I truly do suggest that they know that before they come. And that's why there's a list of a variety of different things that they can bring to authorize an I-9 to actually occur in the appropriate way. So if one document is expired, that there are other documents that they could bring to do this form. So now the employer, so after they fill out that first part as the employee, then the employer has three days to fill out the backside of that document. So, and that is that they have the original documentation. So, there have been times where I've had somebody show up and their driver's license has expired, their passport is no good. And so they have 3 days to get it to you because you have to complete that form within 3 days saying that they're authorized to work in the US. Employees choose, like I said, the acceptable documentation, and I'm going to give you all of those that are available, but they are on page 3 of the I-9 form. And you must keep them in a separate folder outside of the employee, in the employee records. So that is a really big thing that I think sometimes people don't understand, that I want to just be clear. If you were to get audited for your I-9s, you need to make sure that that is a folder that has only I-9s in it. It is not in their employee folder. It is a separate folder that you would give to a government agent that comes in that was inspecting those. You would not give them their employee folder that goes along with it. So be sure the I-9s stay in a separate folder. I even put them in a separate filing cabinet outside of the employee folders. So when they're selecting the employee, when they're selecting, they have 3 choices. They can be either a U.S. citizen, a non-citizen national, but they're lawfully a permanent resident, or they have alien authorized to work in the U.S. Those are the 3 statuses that are available for them to document. So for a foreign passport, that's what they would put in there. And you can see a sample right here that they would put their alien registration number, which is also a USCIS number. Or if they have an I-94 admissions number, they would put that. If they have their foreign passport, you would put their passport number and the country in which it was issued. Make sure that. And then at the top, which a lot of people don't necessarily think about it, but you can see it on number 4, an alien authorized to work until expiration date. And that expiration date has to be filled in if they have one of those 3 situations, so that you are not, that would be a $3,000 fine if you did not have that date filled in, if somebody were to come and audit it. So it's sort of stuck at the top there, but it is really important that you make sure that that is filled out. And so you as an employer needs to make sure page 1, which the employee is filling out, is filled out in full and correctly. They sign and then they date. Okay. And that is what happens on that first one. Now, if they need a translator or somebody to prepare this document for them on their behalf, there is a portion at the bottom in which that person then identifies. That cannot be you as the employer. That has to be someone that they bring in and can actually fill it out on their behalf, not the employer. So just to be clear. So as I said, there's acceptable documentation. There's a list A, which you only need to bring one of those forms. And then there's a list B and C, and you need 2 forms of identification if you don't have something on the A list. So let's go to that. So the A list of documentation, and this is what I send to them ahead of time, so they know what they need to bring to you as a new employee. So list A could be a passport, permanent resident or alien registration card, It is that I-94 form, okay? Those, you only need one document, and that does it. So if someone has that I-94 form, they're done. They just have to show you that, and that's it. Now, a lot of people want to bring you a driver's license and a social security card. And that's fine too, because that's one from list B and one from list C. So they have to do one from B and one from C, so two documents, if they cannot produce anything from A. Okay, and so that is really clear. And on the document itself, it's pretty clear. And you can see a sample of the document on the right-hand side here. You'll notice list A, and this is where the employer fills this out. They take actually that passport, they put in all the information, notarizing, and this is where you're saying, I saw it, I got it, and I know that this is real, and this is the information that you're putting in on list A. You will then notice over to the side, it says list B and list C, and those are in a different box. So it's very clear to us that we either have to have one from A or two documents, one from B and one from C. And I think the form is very clear there, but you yourself need to know that you're putting the document that you are given in the right area. So is it from list A? Is it list from B or list C? So they cannot bring, for example, a driver's license and a hospital ID. They can't do that because they're both in list B. So be sure that when you are filling this out, you are looking at where you should be documenting what documents you have on the back side, because this is you attesting. And this is also a place that, you're going to sign off saying, I saw these documents, I verified that they are real, and are authorized to actually work here in the US. Um, and then at the bottom, after you fill out that information from the documents that you have received, you yourself have to sign. You have to put in the date, and remember that date needs to be within 3 days of their date of hire, which is on the first page. You have to put your title. You have to put, who you are, the department you work in, the town. So you are putting in all this information because you technically are now on this form of saying, I saw these original documents and I am attesting that this person is authorized. And so that is really important for you to know that this is, you're putting it out on the line for the government to say that you saw them. This is the information you put in. That is the person that you are actually hiring, as a testament to, this documentation should you get audited. Now, there are retention information, and I already talked about the storage, right? So storage has to be only I-9 forms together. So they can be digitally, but you got to make sure that they are in a secure, accessible, related to guidelines. So if anybody has like an HR system, I do know personally Square does it. So if you use Square Payroll, they have an I-9 component, and they meet the regulations of the storage of the I-9 information. So you just want to make sure. If they're digitally, that's fine. But if they're not, you keep them in a separate location. You must retain these documents for 3 years after someone leaves. So if they are no longer working for you, that I-9 needs to be held for 3 years after their employment ends. The other thing is the I-9 form, you know, it should be updated. So if they are rehired, and especially for seasonal places that have that, you would then go back and verify a rehire. And there is a section down below where you sign that would bring them back into the mix. Okay, so that is something to remember to keep that if you are rehiring, especially in those situations where you have somebody that is seasonal and potentially could come back, is to be sure to keep those. So avoiding mistakes is truly the biggest thing that I want to reiterate to people is because just like I said, one error can cause you, one I-9 with several errors can be thousands of dollars. So make sure you are verifying that those documents are real and putting them in the right columns when they present that information to you. Section 1 must be completed by the employee, not you, unless they have a preparer or a translator to assist them, in which they would document that on the bottom of page 1. And then employers should accept only those original documents. Do not accept a photocopy in that first time. And when you are actually taking them, you have the 3 days to get that original from them. And so just knowing that to just ensure compliance. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead, I think, and we're going to stop recording. And then I'm going to open it up to any questions that you might have about this situation scenario that I can hopefully answer.